What's the most unusual place for falling in love you can ever think of? Operation table, yes? It's most women's dream to have their unique love story with a Prince Charming or a successful, reputable man, with whom they will live happily ever after. Sarah's case was no exception. She had this all. Her breathtaking beauty got her award for Miss Maryland at a very young age. She not only fell in love with a reputed doctor there, but also started her career as an anesthetist under his supervision. Between them, it was love at first sight. Nobody ever expected this copybook love story would turn into a gruesome murder in no time, and the world would lose another beautiful soul. Sarah Harris. It was summer of 2020, Washington, D.C. 23-year-old Sarah needed to get her wisdom teeth removed, so she went to see a dentist at a clinic near her home. She was tested by Dr. James Ryan, who was a well-known oral surgery practice. Dr. Ryan had built a solid reputation with years of experience for being genuinely caring, and a lot of people spoke highly of him. When Sarah Harris finally went in for wisdom teeth surgery, she probably believed she was in safe hands. But at 23 and a new patient, she likely never imagined that he had allegedly been watching her since she was just 14. Dr. Ryan didn't just remove Sarah's teeth. According to her family, Sarah and Ryan had become romantically involved after the surgery, and he took away her sense of control, and ultimately, her life. On the morning of January 26, 2022, first responders found Sarah unresponsive on the floor of the house she lived in with Dr. James Ryan. Despite their efforts, they couldn't revive her. Dr. James Ryan tearfully spoke to police, captured on a body camera, recounting the night before. He explained that Sarah had told him to go to bed since he had work the next day, so he did around 10 or 11 p.m. He claimed Sarah had been struggling with drugs and mental health issues and suspected an overdose, pointing to her battles with depression and anxiety. As a doctor, he himself suspected she had overdosed, saying it had happened before, and that he had tried to perform CPR, but this time Sarah didn't make it. Ryan also admitted that Sarah had a history of drug misuse, including stealing anesthetics. He framed it as a suicide, or just a miscalculated overdose of drugs, and at first authorities seemed to believe his story. But Sarah's mother didn't. At the scene, Sarah's mother, Tina, was convinced something more sinister had happened. She immediately accused Ryan of foul play, attacking him and claiming he had staged it to look like a suicide. Authorities also found a couple of drug-related items near Sarah, deepening their suspicions. But what made her mother so sure that it's a murder, not just a case of accidental drug overdose? 2 reasons. 1, she knew her daughter better than anyone, that no matter what, Sarah can't commit anything like that. And 2, Tina had been wary of Ryan ever since he first met Sarah as her oral surgeon during her wisdom teeth removal. Tina Harris fondly remembers the close bond she had with her daughter Sarah, who was also very close to her 3 siblings, especially her protective older sister Rachel. But Sarah faced her own challenges growing up in suburban Maryland. She started experimenting with drugs and dealing with anxiety and depression around the age of 14. Despite these struggles, she was a star in high school, excelling academically and mastering multiple languages like German, Spanish, Russian, and sign language. Sarah pushed herself hard in her studies, but also knew how to have fun, often spending time with friends, singing, and playing music. In 2018, Sarah met her first boyfriend, Henry Peterson, at a music festival. He was 7 years older than her, and they quickly formed a deep connection, talking about their future together. The only problem between them was, it was a long-distance relationship, so eventually it didn't work out. But Henry never really lost touch, and he always believed they'd get back together one day. In the meantime, by her mid-20s, Sarah had found success in modeling and beauty pageants, even winning the Miss Maryland Petite title in 2020. Around this time, she eventually met Dr. Ryan for her teeth surgery. Sarah technically had a boyfriend even at that time, but according to Tina Harris, Dr. Ryan didn't seem to care. After the medical procedure, Ryan's interest in Sarah became more obvious. He was divorced at the age of 47. At the time, he had 3 grown-up children, was dating another woman, and also had a baby with one of his employees. so it was very unlikely that the guy might be interested in someone as mature or more than half his age like Sarah. How strange it was for Tina when Ryan's interest began to shift towards Sarah. Then one day all his messages to her were full of emojis and it just seemed like so much out of character. Not only that, without even asking for a resume, Ryan offered Sarah a job as a surgical assistant under his supervision. At first, Tina thought it was a fantastic opportunity for her. Since Sarah was also interested in a medical career, she accepted the job. But by early 2021, things changed. Sarah agreed to go out with Ryan just as he was wrapping up his other relationship. Even though Tina was skeptical at first, she had to admit that Ryan was also impressing her. He showered Sarah with gifts, like a diamond necklace and a leased new car. He even took Sarah and her family on all expenses-paid trips and told Tina he'd love for her to be like a second mom to Sarah. And that's how Sarah started quietly dating Dr. Ryan. By the summer of 2021, they had moved in together, and since then, things began to fall apart. James Ryan had become a big part of Sarah Harris's life. He was both her boss and boyfriend, even letting her live rent-free in his house. But still, Sarah looked anxious and was depressed, which compelled her to seek a psychiatrist who diagnosed her with having bipolar disorder. As it later turned out, Ryan was grooming her that time. Tina had also noticed some warning signs from the physical aspect of Sarah. Sarah had lost weight and her complexion had deteriorated. It had long been obvious that something was seriously amiss, but Tina couldn't figure out what it could be. Until they went on a family holiday to Key West in September, where Ryan came out with some pretty disturbing comments that opened Tina's eyes. Ryan told Tina that 2020 wasn't the year he met Sarah. Actually, he really only met Sarah until she was 14 years old and has stalked her since then. He would sit in the park to watch her play. Years went by, but his stalking did not waver, and he learned that she worked in a toy store, so he was visiting there just to catch a glimpse of her. He even recalled dressing up as Elsa from Frozen. Later, he also knew that she had been a waitress in a restaurant. From then onwards, Ryan used to keep going to the restaurant where she used to serve. This discovery proved how creepy this was, as he showed how abnormal his interest in her was, right from his younger age. By their next trip to Florida, a lot of things had already changed for Sarah. She started wearing sloppy clothes even during hot weather. She argued with Ryan frequently. When they returned to Maryland, on October 28, 2021, Tina got a troubling call from her daughter. On that call, she couldn't hold back her feelings. "I hate him. I don't want to be here. I want to go home," she said. Tina was shocked by how slurred Sarah's speech was. Being concerned, Tina and Rachel hurried over to Sarah's house, and as Tina walked in, she felt like she had stepped into hell. Sarah opened the door looking disheveled, with a strong smell around her, and it was clear she had lost a lot of weight. She looked like a shell of her former self, down from 120 pounds to practically skin and bones. Inside, it was a nightmare. Tina saw 4 bags, syringes, bloody footprints, and drug vials scattered everywhere. Rachel started clicking photographs of everything. Sarah pushed off all the accusations of substance taking, claiming she was just dehydrated and Ryan was helping her. But Tina was horrified. She threatened her that she would tell Ryan everything about what Sarah was doing, but worsening the matter, that sent Sarah into more panic, begging her not to do it. When Tina rolled up Sarah's sleeves, she saw a shocking number of needle marks and bruises, and her heart sank. Even though her instincts screamed at her to call the authorities, Tina decided to hold off for the time being. However, she insisted that Sarah go back to her place. A week later, though, Ryan convinced Sarah again to go back to him. For the weeks that went by, Sarah slowly started healing and got better. She started doing what she'd been doing previously: cooking, eating, even attending church. Life was good, or so it seemed, until another call came from Sarah on December 3, 2021. On that call, she was slurring her words again. This time, Rachel Harris visited Sarah and encountered an even worse scene, full of drug paraphernalia. Tina was not willing to waste more time and turned directly to Ryan, telling him off and saying she was worried sick about her daughter's well-being. but Ryan offered the excuse that he was merely hydrating Sarah. However, later on he admitted that he was indeed providing her with drugs, lest she find her elsewhere. Tina realized what the real issue actually was. She pleaded with Ryan to distance himself completely from Sarah as soon as possible. She even threatened to call the cops and put him away if he didn't end his affairs with her daughter. He agreed to this at least initially, but actually he never cut ties. In the end, Tina realized that she could not keep fighting with Sarah, because that's what was giving Ryan an opportunity to be close with Sarah. Naturally, Tina was afraid that if she tried to lock her up, it would completely ruin their mother-daughter relationship. Meanwhile, the Harris family faced even more tragedy. Sarah's brother, Christopher, died unexpectedly from a heart attack at just 38. While the family was already mourning and was yet to recover from the shock just 18 days later, on January 26, 2022, Tina and Rachel received a devastating call from Ryan, revealing that Sarah also had died. When her brother Christopher passed away, Sarah shared a tribute on social media that said, "Never goodbye, I'll see you soon, big bro." Little did anybody realize that it would come true so soon. During the time of death, Sarah was weighing just 83 pounds. Authorities came, they ruled her death as undetermined, and Ryan claimed it was simply an overdose, a tragic result of Sarah's mental health issues. But what Ryan thought was the end turned out to be the beginning of something else he hadn't considered. Just 3 months before she passed away, Sarah left a voicemail for her ex-boyfriend, Henry Peterson. In it, she sounded really happy about a new relationship and expressed how much she trusted her new partner. But after not hearing from Sarah in January 2022, Henry felt a little doubtful. He did some searching online and found her obituary. Meanwhile, Tina Harris had an intuition that the man whom Sarah trusted was somehow behind her murder, James Ryan. So, Sister Rachel decided to dig deeper in silence. She managed to crack into Sarah's laptop and found a ton of text messages between Sarah and Ryan. These messages left their narcotics use exposed and contained tranquilizers and anesthetics in it, including diazepam, propofol, and ketamine. Rachel typed everything into a binder, gathering all evidence to create an enormous book-like document with about 200 pages. An autopsy report from the medical examiner confirmed that Sarah did indeed have those drugs in her system. These drugs are highly addictive, and it is enough to be fatal when mixed. Rachel turned her binder over to the Montgomery County Police in February 2022, and it went straight to Detective Ian Iacoviello's desk. He went through it and knew immediately that the initial police assessment had been off by a mile. This was clearly not a case of suicide or an accidental overdose on drugs related to Sarah. The texts were suggestive in the way that Ryan was involved in Sarah's drug use and handing out drugs without keeping an eye on her health. A few key messages showed that Sarah frequently asked Ryan for drugs, which he never balked at handing out. There is even an alarming conversation the night before her death, in which Sarah asks him to get a hold of some ketamine, to which he is happy to agree. On February 11, 2021, Ryan wrote, "I can give you an injection. The anxiety will be completely gone in 6 seconds. It will work. Let's try it." By October, Sarah was asking for the drugs, writing. In November, she said, "We need syringes, I feel like so courage." Then in December, she reached out with, "I just really need sleep Xan, sick you bring propofol." It's heartbreaking, but a fact that Ryan effectively turned Sarah into a drug addict. And last but not least, it seems Ryan actually administered the drugs to Sarah himself. On December 20th, 2021, he wrote, "If you wake up, I just went to change, after I gave you ketamine just now." Detective Iacoviello pointed out that the authorities on the scene didn't even recognize the real nature of these drugs. Rather, they mistook them for prescribed medications. While they didn't find typical street drug paraphernalia, the stuff in Sarah's home looked like it belonged in a medical setting. But fast forward to March 22, 2022, almost 2 months after Sarah died, James Ryan was arrested for her murder. Ryan was accused of giving drugs to Sarah Harris while she was sleeping, and without even monitoring. Detective Ian Iacoviello also took notice of Ryan's growing obsession with Sarah. It wasn't only deepening, but was also beginning to hint at a troubling need for control. Janice Miller, the social worker, also testified that most dysfunctional relationships are characterized by a huge power imbalance, where one partner seeks dominion over another. She further stated that all of this applies to Ryan's behavior, possibly dating back years when he first became interested in Sarah and started considering her more as an object and less as an equal. Prosecutors charged Ryan with drug distribution and a rare kind of murder, but they struggled to prove that he intended for her to die. As a result, the prosecution had a hard time convincing the jury, as Ryan's defense claimed he was actually trying to save Sarah's life. This kind of crime has a special name: Depraved-Heart murder. In case you don't know much about it, Depraved-Heart murder is a type of second-degree murder, where the defendant shows a reckless disregard for human life. While on the surface level, it doesn't look that violent or dangerous, it's originally considered more serious than manslaughter, because it involves actions and manipulations that are so dangerous that death is likely even if the defendant didn't mean to kill anyone. Maryland Assistant State's Attorney James Dietrich gave a clear and simple example to demonstrate it. Suppose if someone randomly fires a gun into a crowd, they might not intend to kill anyone, but that reckless behavior makes it very likely someone could die on the spot, or at least get fatally injured and eventually die. In Dr. Ryan's case, his medical training suggests he completely understood the risks of the drugs he gave to Sarah Harris. In the case against Dr. James Ryan, prosecutors accused him of something pretty serious: Depraved-Heart murder in connection with Sarah Harris's death. They argued that even if he didn't set out to kill her, he knew the risks of the drugs he gave her and just didn't care about her well-being. The main point they needed to prove was that he showed reckless disregard for her life. Since his arrest, Ryan was charged with various crimes ranging from depraved-heart murder and involuntary manslaughter charges to the charge of distributing and being in possession with intent to distribute drugs. When the trial opened on August 16, 2023, prosecutors portrayed Ryan as a controlling boyfriend who got Sarah hooked on drugs and dispensed dangerous sedatives without any proper medical care. They also produced evidence such as text messages in which Ryan spoke about giving ketamine to Sarah and had a medical expert explain just how deadly the combination of drugs was that killed her. On the other hand, the prosecution reminded the court that though Ryan followed all the safety precautions at work, he completely dropped the ball at home. On the contrary, the defense argued that Sarah also had her psychological problems, adding that she was fighting mental illness and even suggesting the possibility of a case of self-theft of the drugs. They even claimed the investigation wasn't handled well and that there was no solid proof linking Ryan to giving her the deadly dose. Detective Iacoviello believed that the way drug bottles were found in Sarah's purse suggests someone else was involved as well in giving her the lethal dose. But the defense argued back by saying that the detectives messed up the investigation, especially since they did not check the syringes for Ryan's DNA or fingerprints. Ryan chose not to take the stand, so his lawyers brought in witnesses who painted him as a caring partner. A friend of Dr. Ryan, Kyle Stevens, has known him for a long time and also described him as clean-cut and straight-laced. According to him, at first, Ryan seemed really enthusiastic about Sarah, but later on, he reached out to Stevens, expressing worries about how to help someone who was struggling with depression and possible addiction. Stevens wondered if Ryan was talking about Sarah but decided not to bring it up. When Stevens heard about Ryan's arrest and trial, he was completely shocked by what happened. During the closing arguments, prosecutors made a powerful statement, saying that giving Sarah those drugs was like handing her a loaded gun, no matter if he was the one who administered them or not. The prosecution's primary argument was that it didn't really matter if Ryan was the one who directly gave her the drugs, or if he wanted her dead. Just his reckless actions could be enough for a conviction. Now it was up to the jury to decide if Ryan's behavior met the standards for depraved-heart murder. What do you think their final verdict was? Detective Ian Iacoviello, who was involved in the investigation, continues to think about Sarah. At a press conference, Rachel Harris spoke out about Sarah's tragic fate at the hands of Ryan, calling him a predator. Despite her deep sorrow, Sarah's mother, Tina, hopes people remember her daughter as the vibrant and caring person she was. And meanwhile, after nearly 2 weeks of lengthy proceedings, on August 25, 2023, the jury finally announced their verdict on the case. They found Ryan guilty of second-degree depraved-heart murder, manslaughter, and drug charges related to Sarah Harris's death. When it came time for sentencing, both Tina and Rachel Harris urged the judge for a long prison sentence, with Tina tearfully asking for Ryan to spend life behind bars. However, Ryan's defense team submitted letters from friends supporting him and talked about his battles with drug addiction and mental health issues. While he admitted he should have stopped Sarah from getting the drugs that led to her death, he insisted he didn't give her the fatal dose himself. He said to the court, "While I did not administer the drugs to Sarah, and I'm not exactly sure when she got them, those drugs were absolutely my responsibility," Ryan said. "And I should have made sure that she never had access to them. I should have never thought I could control her addiction." The judge ultimately sentenced Ryan to 40 years for depraved heart murder, which added up to 45 years when considering other charges. This means he'll be placed among violent offenders, which raises questions about the role of medical professionals in such cases. What's your take on this case? Do you think Dr. Ryan was really guilty, or the judiciary should have seen this unique case in a new light? Share your views in the comments below and subscribe to the channel for more thrilling true crime stories like this. See you soon.